Aloha and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our live webinar here today, hosted by ProService Hawaii and the Hawaii Restaurant Association. My name is Dale Yasunaga. I'm a business development manager here at ProService Hawaii, and I'm very excited to act as your moderator here today. Before I get into introducing our panelists who's joining us here this morning to answer some questions and share their knowledge, I just want to go over a couple of logistical items for our audience. So, as you may have noticed when you first joined the webinar, your lines are muted. However, if you do have a question, we have enabled the questions box, which typically appears on the right-hand side of your screen if you're using a web browser to view the webinar. And there's one of the options if you're using the GoToMeeting app. So if you have any questions or if any comments, feedback, please feel free to use that questions box area. And we certainly will make some time toward the end to answer as many of the questions from the audience as we can as well. We will also be sharing a recording of this webinar after its conclusion so that you folks can certainly watch back for anything you might have missed, or certainly if you feel like there's anybody else that may benefit from hearing the information that's shared here today, you're more than welcome to share the link to the recording with your colleagues and any of your team members as well. So with that, we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to introduce our fantastic panel here this morning. So, it's my pleasure to introduce the folks here that are going to be speaking to our main topics today as it relates to the restaurant and food and beverage industry. What's working, what's not, and what's kind of next in store for our favorite restaurants here in Hawaii. And we've got an amazing group of restaurant leaders here today to share their experiences, the lessons that they've learned, and perhaps some of the things that they're trying to manage through this crisis and these challenging times. I'll go through some brief introductions for each of our panelists, and as I introduce each of you gentlemen, if you could, if you're on camera, if you give a wave for the audience, that'd be much appreciated. So first, I'd like to start off by introducing Matson Davis, who is the owner of Magic Speech Grill, located on the beautiful coast on Big Island in Kailua Kona. Matson brings to the panel, in our discussion today, incredible depth of knowledge with over 25 years in the restaurant industry. And, it'll be great to hear not only the thoughts he has regarding the restaurant industry as a whole and what he's seeing, but also get his perspective as a neighbor island business leader, and what this sort of situation has presented in terms of challenges and lessons learned. So welcome, Matson. We also have Carlos Delgado, who is the CEO of the Boiling Crab located at SALT in Kaka'ako. Carlos also brings a wealth of knowledge in the restaurant business, including having worked with California Pizza Kitchen for over 20 years. Carlos, I also understand that you're joining us from Los Angeles, so thanks for accommodating us and the time zone difference and joining to lend your perspective here today. And finally, unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we're still trying to work that out. He's not on video, but we have Rick Nakashima. Rick, if I can ask you to say hi so people can recognize the voice.
Yeah, hello.
So Rick Nakashima, like our other panelists, is a longtime industry veteran as well. He's the CEO of Rainbow's Drive in Kalihi, Ruby Tuesdays Hawaii, as well as Kiukaku Hawaii, with multiple locations all over Oahu. And we look forward to hearing from him as well. It's particularly, how his team has adapted to running multiple concepts and multiple locations during these challenging times. So as you can see, we've got a great panel for you folks here today, and we're really excited to dive right in. So with that, we're going to get started with our first set of questions. So to get things kicked off here, we'll kind of do maybe sort of a retrospective lessons learned over the last month or so. As we all know, restaurants and bars have been able to offer dine-in services for about a month now. And so love to hear from our panelists, what are some of the lessons that you've learned in terms of, what the last month has meant for your business? What have you tried that's been working great? If there's anything that you tried that maybe didn't work great or needed some tweaking with as you learned and adapted to, sort of this new paradigm that we're in. And I'd love to start with Carlos.
Well, for us, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, I think, as it has been for everybody, with the way things, first we went to takeout only, then we personally had to close. We just couldn't hold on with the amount or the low volume that we were doing. And then we reopened for takeout a month later. it has given us a great education on our takeout in particular in terms of logistically and technically the way that we handle it. We were doing about 8-10% of our overall sales prior to that. So to be doing 100% of your sales out the takeout window was an experience. And even since we've gone back to doing 50% capacity dine-in, we are holding still in a 40% area of takeout. So I'm sure it's partly people that are still maybe a little uneasy about going out still. But we've also learned, especially 4th of July is a great example. We had huge, it was the first time our takeout was actually more than our dine-in. So people are starting to see us a little bit as let's get it out, take it, do the potluck, get the family out, whether it's on the lawn or, under the tarp in the garage. So we're excited about what we've learned from takeout, and we certainly have adjusted a bit there.
Fantastic. I love to also get some perspective from our other panelists. So Matson?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me
Yes,
okay? Yeah, good. I've been popping in and out of we're still a little back on the Big Island here. Things are a little quieter. Our IT isn't quite as strong. But anyway, just taking that idea, there's not a whole lot of people that live on the Big Island. That's a big problem for the volume that we're experiencing here. I'm quite familiar where the Boiling Crab is, and I'd considered putting a Kona Brewing Company there many years ago. And that's been one of our challenges. So takeout was a very slow start for us. Delivery, non-existent. Tried it for a couple of weekends, nobody there. I think what we've learned is we had to adapt our menu. I had to go back to the middle of the menu that had a smaller amount of staff that could execute. And I feel confident that I could eat by 50 to 100% without an additional kitchen staff. And that was my big thing. So I had to really kind of relook at my food costs. I had to expand certain parts of the menu and get rid of other parts of the menu so that we could keep waste down. And again, really try to manage that labor. I'm just not doing enough right now, as I think a lot of restaurants, 40 seats on a 125 seat restaurant. I'm just not doing enough volume to pay all the bills. There's just no way. Without PPP, I wouldn't even be close. And I'm very much looking on the horizon at my burn rate right now and what that's going to take. So that to me, rebuilding the menu to manage the food cost and to also manage the labor in the kitchen. I have a really hard time doing that in the front of the house because I want to commit to a certain level of service. And if you cut that off, everybody sees that. They forget everything else except they were too busy. They didn't have time for me. They didn't have any of this. And servers are inexpensive at $10.10, but still it adds up when you put everything else onto it. So I hope that helped.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for both Carlos and Matson, the candor and sharing some of the specifics. Before we get to Rick and some of the general observation lessons he has to share, I'd like to follow up real quick, Matson. So you mentioned redesigning the menu, kind of paring it down, looking at food costs, things like that. How are you able to share? How have your customers responded? Do you have regulars that, hey, these are the items I like, or how did that factor into what you decide?
Hey, there he is. Hey, Rick. Nice to see you on the screen there. They were okay. They were okay with it. I get a lot of thank you very much for opening. Unlike some of the other locations or some of the other restaurant people right here, this is my thing. A big part of my thing is location, location, location. I'm on the edge of a beautiful ocean next to a beach, and so that really drives a lot of people's experiences at my restaurant. It's the first time I really looked at a location as much as I had with this situation. So they're just really happy to be there, and they're really happy to be in there. My wife is very bored with the menu and gives me grief about it every day. She's a tough customer, and we're working on that. How do we continue to be fresh farm to table when a lot of our guys here, their pricing is so high? I've had to look at other produce and things like that to still give people a flair of packaging what somebody else is doing. But so I hope that helps.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Rick, it looks like you're able to join us on video.
Sorry, I'm late to the game, Dale, Carlos, and Matt. I appreciate the patience.
No, not a problem. So if I can ask you, Rick, to share some of the lessons that you've learned since dine-in service has been reopening. I know that you folks have been notifying customers. I know at Yukaku, for example, through the mobile app and things like that. So what how's the last month been, and what lessons have you taken away from it so far?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting 3 months recently. I've learned a ton about what customers are wanting and what we are doing. Let me see if I can turn down the volume here. Are you getting echo there?
Rick, you might have two things on your computer and your phone. Maybe you want to.
Yeah, let me. Okay, how's that?
Good for us. Yeah, you're a little muffled.
Very good. But what we learned really most of all was customers are really looking for value at this point. It was a quick lesson. And when we first started the dine out or dine out only, take out only, the first thing we found after trying to sell things at the regular price was just wasn't going well. And as soon as we discounted, it just made a huge difference. And even to this day now, with dine-in open still, we're only doing good numbers when we discount our meals. And unfortunately, maybe we've trained our people that way, our customer base, but that's where we're at. We're real happy with where we're at now, and yet the social distancing and everything, it's been tough. I also learned a lot about people I'm working with and how proud I am of the new staff I have. We're really, really doing well, and it's been enjoyable actually through the past 3 months, 4 months, whatever you want to call it. People have really stepped up. I kind of want to say it's shown some true colors out of people, and they've really, really worked harder than ever and shown that we've become a great team. That I'm proud of most. So as far as financially, the tough negative things of that, the people-to-people skills, my executive team and I work together real closely. We meet every morning by phone at 9, and I think we've come a long way, and we're ahead of the game, I feel like, other than the bottom line, obviously.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing in candor as well. One thing you had spoken to, and then it actually has a follow-up question. I have a follow-up question then for Carlos that's in that theme, is Rick, you had mentioned that during this time you've learned a lot about your staff. People have stepped up, things like that. Carlos, I imagine your situation is similar to several business owners in the state, where you divide your time between Hawaii and LA, and given everything going on with travel safety and all that, you're having to manage your business remotely. How has that been going on last month, and how have you worked with your team to kind of adapt to that, since the dine-in services has reopened?
Well, when I was at California Pizza Kitchen, I was in charge of the international and domestic franchise operations. So I spent a lot of time getting used to managing in absentia, so to speak. I manage from a distance, and you do learn different techniques. It's really all about the questions you ask. Obviously, you're looking at your financials in terms of those being a guide, what's happening inside the store, but you really learn a lot about the right questions to ask. Two of my managers, they're all former CPK guys. Two of them I've worked with for 20 plus years. So we're used to working with each other in that capacity. It's frustrating for me because I would, number one, rather be there at home where I'm not, because at this point to go over there and have to wait 14 days to go out to be with my guys and be on my business is something that doesn't make sense for me. So that's a bit frustrating, but I'm used to managing from a distance in a lot of ways. So it's been like old hat for me. And looking at the numbers and asking the right questions really is what reveals to you what's happening in there if you're not there all the time. And certainly sometimes you'll stumble upon it and go, shoot, I should have looked at that earlier. And you'll see something and ask those questions. And by virtue of the answers, I'll either know how much they're looking at it, and they do the same with me. I mean, my managers are great. They challenge me all the time. I force them to challenge me with questions about what's happening in our business and what we're doing, and it enables us as a team to constantly reevaluate and adjust our business based on this constant moving target that we've got in front of us right now with this COVID-19.
Hey, thanks for sharing. Some of you had brought, it's been a theme throughout, and know that it's very top of mind, especially for restaurants, and many businesses throughout the state that can only open on limited capacity. But I'd like to move, maybe then it's a good segue to our second main topic of conversation today. Given the limited capacity, right? At times at most 50% capacity allowed for dine-in, may sometimes less if you to abide by social distancing rules and safety guidelines. We know that managing the bottom line is a concern for many businesses, and so love to hear from each of you. What are your thoughts in regards to the coming months? What are you sort of anticipating? What strategies or things are you planning for to account for continuing to try to drive revenue, adequate revenue, and then while managing profitability as best you can? So for this, I'd love to start with Matson, if we could.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to more people coming to town. I mean, that's really, and I've been told by some of my friends that don't live here in Hawaii that I need to look at it a little differently, that there are more people here in Kona to be able to pull from. But I just keep thinking of ways of trying to get them in here, and maybe there'll be some theme nights or something like that. I just want to see more volume. I just need to see more volume. And I am on the edge of town instead of in the center of town. And what am I pulling from? And that's one of my biggest thoughts there in the last week or two, where I feel like I could actually forecast. The consistency of what I've been doing is pretty remarkable in the last 3 weeks. I mean, it's just the same number average every week. So I can start to really play backwards on that. And it starts with your, and once you're fixed, your variable, you're fixed, and costs are really what you're looking at. How do I move the needle on some of those things? Is there any way to move the needle? Is the landlord going to help me move the needle? Is utilities, just a variety of things to really try to take some controls on. I've had to be real clear with employees about how many hours I need them to work, because I can't afford the insurance part of things. So, I'm food costs, yes. Kitchen labor, yes. How do I get the up? How do I get that up? And so it's really about what are we doing with the people that are going to be coming into town, and when they're going to be coming into town. There's an inter-island type. I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more about that whole quarantine situation inside the dining room, but from an outlook, how do I get the top up? And maybe what Rick said is what I need to do. And maybe it's even a combination of falsely doing it. Do I go ahead and introduce a higher value burger, but then discount it, and then everybody thinks they're getting a deal? So yeah, I've actually discounted, but I've gone up at the same time I've come down. You know what I'm saying? Because people are attracted to some of that stuff, and I'm not sure what it's going to be. And so.
Thank you. Rick, I'd love to get your perspective on this topic, especially given your concepts are that you're operating are different. So I imagine the considerations are going to be different for each. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Oh, Rick, unfortunately, I think you're on mute. Oh, okay. Oh, I think we still can't hear you, Rick. So we'll try to troubleshoot that with you, Rick, here, and then, but in the meantime, we can ask for Carlos and his input on this topic here.
Absolutely. You know, for me, Matt's hit a few points on the head, and one of the, it seems like the misconceptions out there is with the volume. I mean, none of us, I mean, most people are not going to make money with the sales that we're doing. We're just not. The idea is really how we can hold ourselves up at a certain point till we can get there. How can we hang on? As Mattson said, that PPP loan was, you know, that's the reason that I was able to reopen. I'm getting closer, I'm getting in that neighborhood, but I'm still a ways away from what would be profitability for me. A second point that Matt just touched on, which for me is 100% correct. You know, the food cost is what it is. Mine is too high, number one, but that's a separate thing from COVID. It's seafood, and people have a hard time understanding seafood is expensive. It's much higher than it really should be from a restaurant standard given standpoint. It's just higher than it would. But I wanted to come in and give the best value I could when we opened 2.5 years ago. But again, it is what it is. Labor is what it is. We can manage that and try to get what we feel exactly what it is that we need in there. Our people are giving us 100%. As Rick said, you know, our people are great. Our managers, our employees are great. The employee pool has always been a little bit difficult in Hawaii, and all of us that have done business there for decades know that. That hasn't changed. I thought maybe it would a little bit, but it really hasn't. The good ones are good, and the ones that kind of want to find a reason not to come into work kind of still find a reason not to come into work. But it's those fixed costs, and that is a tough one, because when you're doing low volume, your fixed costs are your fixed costs. That's why they're called that. So you've got your utilities, and you know, you can do a little bit of stuff with those and make sure that lights are getting turned off, you know, and not ones that aren't being used or not on at all, and things like that. But it's very small effect. Your benefits and payroll and all those things that you're paying, it's a reality. And that when more volume you do, that sales, those percentages go down because your volume's going up and you still have the same amount of employees. But on the flip side is when your volume's low, you're still paying, as a rule, I'm paying that same thing, especially right now that we're 50% occupancy open. I'm paying the same thing right now. If I were doing another $25,000 or $30,000 a week, I'd be still paying the same thing. So those percentages of those fixed costs continue to drop, and that's when things get better for us as operators. So that's what I think we're really battling with. As Mattson said again, I mean, the people that are coming in is what I'm looking for. We ended up having a little better tourism. You know, we're in Kaka'ako. That wasn't my goal. Local was my goal. That's where you survive all year round. But it was a little bit of a blessing what we got, and things that we didn't realize we were going to get that were coming out from Waikiki when they came into town. So I think it will help a lot. One of the blessings that we also ran into was people are used to our takeout now, and we are able to use our takeout window and all these things that we really didn't get a chance to do prior to this. And we're also lucky in that we have a big restaurant. And I have to caveat that because everybody else is going to go, well, you know, you're paying rent on that. But I have the luxury of a second level that I don't pay rent for because of the way I negotiate it. So I've got an 80-seater, 90-seater that I pay rent for, and I can use an upstairs. So I've got a restaurant that's 230 seats that my 50% is much bigger than a lot of other people's 50% is what I'm saying. And that's a benefit for us that has helped us along right now. But I think we're all going to be a little bit dead in the water until we start seeing things open up more, and certainly tourism is a big part of that.
Rick, have we been able to help troubleshoot the audio for you? Oh, fortunately not.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we continue to try and restore the audio with Rick, you know, follow-up question, I guess, for both Mattson and Carlos. You know, looking at, and particularly Carlos, you had mentioned food costs, right? And I know that you mentioned that there was some challenges with that even pre-COVID, But taking a look at, Hawaii supply chain, we knew that was in the news several times, right back kind of early onset of this challenge and this crisis. Are you folks finding that you've been able to work with your suppliers to whether it's reduce the cost or find alternative products that you can incorporate into the menu? How has working with the suppliers for your menus been over the past month or so? Matson?
Sorry, I thought you were going to Carlos first. Sorry, I was thinking. Yeah, I've had to switch some things around a little bit. I've worked well with some local farmers to get some stuff, and I work that in and I feature some of that stuff, but I've really had to look a little bit more on the mainland. Supply has been difficult. Cisco came into town very aggressively. I waited 23 years for Cisco to come to Hawaii. I was stoked when they got here. And then, everything's kind of limited delivery days and difficulty. And, they try to do crazy things too. They freeze their cream. That's not a good thing to freeze it. You got it. Sorry guys, can't take this. So there was a lot of back and forth there on it and with the food cost situation. So I'll tell you what I did do though. And one of the things that people have to realize, and many businesses are this way, restaurants pay today's bills, yesterday's bills with today's money. Okay. They're a cash business and they're paying yesterday's bills with today's cash. When I shut down, I had $100,000 in accounts payable. And I divided it into 3 piles. One was, these are my friends right now. I got some cash in the bank, just go with it. Number 2 was, these are mid-level guys. These are the Waihatas or the people that are in town, but they're big. Hawaiian linen, let's have a conversation. Let's see what we can do. And 3rd was these long-term people, the spirits guys. And I was like, I don't need any booze. I don't need to be current, But what I tried to think of is, could I cut some deals with some of these guys? Yeah, some of the mid-level guys, they helped me out big time. 15, 20% cuts, take care of it. When I started to think that I could actually get Anheuser-Busch to give me a break, even with a relationship that I had with AB from my past, it took me about 2 seconds of a conversation with a general manager that if I didn't pay them exactly what they wanted, they were selling my debt to somebody else. They could give a rip. And they didn't come up and say, hey, look, we're putting all of our Bud Light aluminum bottles on special. They didn't do any of that. If you guys seen what's going on in the off-premise liquor sales have gone through $1 billion a week, something like 7 out of the last 11 weeks. The first time we ever saw $1 billion a week was 4th of July last year. Okay, so obviously there's a shift and there's a lot of people doing that. I'm seeing a lot more day business than evening business. I'm cutting it off at 7:30. Last seating, I got a 5:15 rule. We're ready 5 minutes early. We seat people 15 minutes late. It hasn't been a problem at all to be closed last seating at 7:30. And so, that's kind of where I'm thinking is how do I make it interesting without just making it too expensive? Because I'm trying to make my meals approachable,
Carlos, for maybe a slight pivot, like one thing I thought of, you mentioned that one of the things that's helped your business is people are more aware of the takeout counter. So can you speak a little bit about what are the things, looking forward, and profitability is certainly one thing, but revenue and stability of that revenue is another. What have you been trying, your team been trying for, getting the word out about if you are doing specials, if you are doing takeout, like, what advertising or marketing types of strategies and methods have you been using?
Well, we're a definite social media centric business, and well, we all are, I think, in this day and age. But our biggest focus has really been there. Excuse me. And we've continued to do that. We've done that, right up to the time before we opened back up. My social media person, who's actually my son, has been just going nuts on that. He's a little bit more in tune with a lot of the methods and the approaches of maybe a couple generations below where I am. So he's helped me a lot with some of those newer things and newer approaches. So we've continued to do that, and we have a good following. I don't have the same ability that Matson has to adjust things in terms of like recipes and things like that, because the Boiling Crab is a franchise. So I am handcuffed a little bit in that way. On the flip side, I did a lot of, you take we've got the hardest things on the menu were things that were high food costs and still a little popular, but they don't sell a lot. And oysters, like on the half shell, is probably one really good example I could give to everybody that they can identify with. People out there that they either love them or they don't want any part of them. And so people that love them want them, and they get frustrated when you don't have those. But if you don't sell a lot and you keep, it's almost a convenience item, to be honest with you. But so we had to cut things like that. The easier ones were the things that were maybe not huge sellers. They're not movers. They're also maybe not as craveable as something like an oyster. So we did a lot of shaving of the menu during the takeout only time. But even now, we reserve weekends for certain things that we don't prep a lot of, because in the restaurant business, it's not like at the Gap. You fold a bunch of pans, leave them in the corner, and put them out, in a week from now. If we do that with our stuff, it goes bad. So we've got to figure out the right way in the prep and the pars that are going to sustain us and not lose us money by prepping too much at wrong days of the week or whatever it might be. But to something that actually Rick touched on, I mean, our guests will tell you, hey, tell us when you're going to be in, and I'll order oysters especially for you. We have to be out there for those guests in that way. If you can let us know, we'll do it. My managers are about service with aloha. That's kind of our thing, so to speak, and we relish that. And I think guests feel that, and they appreciate that, and that's what we're about in Hawaii anyway. So it has really paid dividends for us, because I can't discount things. I'm already pressed in food costs, and we have a combo that really is that, and we have that all the time because it's a combo of potatoes and rice and corn and sausage and some different things that we put in there, crawfish, shrimp, and you throw crawfish in as that combo, or you could throw crab in as that combo. So that's as good as I get in terms of discount. Otherwise, I'll disc myself right out of business.
Great. I love the idea of offering, hey, if there's something you want that we used to prepare, or that's in the realm of what our restaurant does, let us know and we'll see if we can do that. I think that speaks to something Rick had shared on, customers are really looking for a lot of value, and they may place higher value in, I can get this thing that I've been craving or that I want. Right? So that's a really interesting thought. Rick, it looks like you may have been able to join back on audio.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, you can. Fantastic.
Perfect.
So Rick, if you could speak for a couple of minutes on this topic, and then we'll move on to our next. How has it been, or looking forward with kind of varying concepts? What are the strategies or plans you have in terms of boosting and maintaining revenue, and then handling things like profitability?
Well, on the side of profitability, we've been going at this for over 16 years now of being open, and it's come a long, long way. I think we've gotten better and better at watching labor and food and using all the computer tools we can. And at this point, I don't really think we can get too much better as far as watching food, labor, and all the other little fixed costs that are out there. The positive thing, we've been really good in every which way with our partnership with Hanson's, and the big one right now that we spoke about earlier, I think Matson did, is the landlords, and negotiating and keeping an open discussion with them as far as how we're going to get to the other side of this. We all don't know how long it's going to last, and it's a biggest worry of mine is how do we negotiate what is fair between us and the landlords. Luckily, we have 3 leases with the McNaughton Group, and I've had some really good open communication with Todd over there. We have 2 with Kamehameha Schools, and that's been great also with Devin. And I think that is going to be one of the keys to how we get past all this. The positive thing is we're all in the same boat.
The negative thing is, I think if we all had to just stop right now and pay all our bills, even with the PPP funds, we might all be out of business. I think it was well said by Carlos or Matson. You know, we operated a deficit, and you know that's part of the food business. And you know, it was really good a few years ago when everything was going super well, and we were ahead of the game, and we paid down our loans, and you know, took nice trips to places once that happened. And but now it's the exact opposite, where you know everything is in a really tight spot. So we as a group on the Ruby Tuesday side have chosen to really push our local menu, and we're developing it now. We've always had a local menu. We've added some things in, you know, some Simon, Norman Simon dish. All you HRA people out there that know Norman Kanehira, he helped us. He wanted us to develop that, and we finally have. We have a roast pork dish that's awesome. And so anyway, that's one of the keys we feel like is everyone knows what Ruby Tuesday does, you know, the ribs and garden bar. But now we feel like we're at a good time to develop the local menu. We are not getting any feedback from corporate like before, where they were really all over us. Right now, they have their own struggles, as we all know. So it's that's been a really big plus. And lastly, I think, you know, we all know that service and our staff is absolutely key right now. Every time a guest comes in, they need to have a almost near perfect experience in order for us to keep them happy, keep them coming back, and for us to stay in check with all the other restaurants out there that we had a huge influx on, that we're all competing for that small pie of money. That pie gets cut up so tightly that we're all competing for a few dollars in there. So, you know, we really need to operate at a near perfect level. And luckily my operators, Sean and Min, are really pushing that. And I think we're doing a really good job of it. So yeah, that's a big one, Dale.
Yeah.
Great. One of the yes.
Dale, I hope that you have this on here. I'd like to you know, introduce or talk about the idea of in the service world, how are our staff dealing with the guests that are coming in and the process of all of COVID.
Yep.
The whole process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you almost read my mind. So I was about to say, I was going to remind our audience of, you know, please submit your questions to the questions box for our panel. Excuse me. And one of the questions that we received from an audience member is exactly about staff. So Matthew, maybe we can start with you. So, you know, this person's question is, you know, how has it been bringing back your staff, you know, as dining has opened, and what are the challenges and what are the wins that you saw there of adjusting to all these new procedures, of kind of the new strategy to engage with customers, provide great service, shifts in the menu, you know, all that over the last month?
Well, you really hit the nail on the head. I never thought I would be competing with the government for my staff because, you know, a lot of our major part of our group is not paid at a wage that is so high. So if they're getting $400 in benefits and another $600 from the bonus, it becomes difficult. Okay. So I've spent a lot of time adjusting some things to try to keep people going. I didn't have a big enough staff that several people left Kona. They left. You know, we get a lot of people more so on the Big Island, I think, on the west side that are here for their 6 months or 2 or 3 years. Their parents said, hey, son, come on home, daughter, come on home, or, you know, come to the mainland or what have you, because, you know, they were kind of done. So we have a small group of people that we're really working with, and we're trying to work with hours to make sure that they're still getting their bonus, because they're not getting the gross amount of hours that they were getting before, because we're just not open that much. Now, on the other side of things, I've worked a lot. We're looking at a lot of the CDC information and trying to make our environment very safe. masks are difficult to wear in the restaurant business. They are very difficult to have in the kitchen. And I still think there's a huge confusion about how the transmission of this is going. And so you've got people that are all by themselves standing somewhere with a mask on, and I'm asking them, I'm trying not to challenge them, but I'm trying to understand why they think that they need to do that, you know, in that particular place. And because it creates fear in other parts. I lost a manager last week with like a 2-day notice. She just said she couldn't do it anymore. She just couldn't feel it anymore. She was just concerned and worried and whatever. And I was like, I got it. I hope you were so wrong and I'm so right, but I understand and I can't change your feelings, you know? So I'm back on the floor again, a few shifts a week, you know? I have to watch my social networking now more than I thought because my staff is making comments about experiences that they're having that I've got to be really conscious of. Hey, whoa, just a minute. Can I point out my social networking to you? Your comment about this 10 top that came in the other day, that's none of your business to talk about, you know, and getting them very riled up about what the guests think they should do. Because remember, we're in this hospitality industry and the guests over our careers, you know, Rick and Carlos and mine, they've become more and more entitled, and they've become more and more pushy about what they expect and what they want. And, you know, we just talked about it yesterday again. If you suspect that the guest is out of quarantine and they're out of town, then bring a manager into the story. And the manager can ask the question in a very polite way and tell those, you know, you understand that we have this regulation right now and we're not comfortable with you in the restaurant. But oh my God, we already said we're already in the negative, and now I'm telling $150 or $200 to go away? And how are they going to respond to me on social media? Because what their perception of it and what they felt that they were entitled to is different. So that's my biggest challenge, you know, right now in my mind is, do my employees feel safe? Are we cleaning enough? Are they feeling safe? And are they feeling safe by the guests that are coming in? And where do they feel that it's their place or not their place? You know, I think our society more and more is, I really try to tell my staff, talk to, don't talk about. If you've got an issue with one of my policies or one of the things that's going on or what I'm doing, please speak to me. I know I can be intimidating. I know I've got to go somewhere. I got to get here, but please talk to everybody else that can't do anything about it. You know, so I mean that to me is really a challenge, and I'm wanting better direction and better understanding. Am I supposed to call the hotline? Am I not to be the police? You know, I'm still trying to make a living. And as to what Rick was talking about with landlords and everything, if this thing goes on another month, the state needs to step up in a different way for us too. It can't just be the feds again, you know, and the only saving grace is, and one of the things that Rick talked about and Carlos mentioned too, we're all in this together. My building didn't burn down and took off. We're all together. We have to get through it together. And like it or not, if you want to have restaurants, which have become a nearly $500 billion a year industry, and we've seen that from 2020 to now double, you know, you're going to have to help us kind of keep the doors open. So.
Understanding, and you know, I know that all of you have brought up in a time or another, we're all in this together, and definitely one of the reasons that we, you know, want to have these sessions, discussions on, you know, can we share ideas and things like that. Carlos, a question for you, since I know that you know you and Rick both work with you know, a corporate brand through Ruby Tuesday and with Boiling Crab. What have you heard, Carlos, if anything, from, you know, counterparts or business owners who run restaurants on the mainland? Like any ideas that have come up that you thought, hey, that's worth trying, or that's interesting in terms of trying to address, you know, revenue or any of these challenges that we've been discussing?
Well, that's been an interesting road, to be honest with you, Dale. It's, you know, there was a lot of information out. All you guys know it. There was a lot of misinformation out. I think, as Matson mentioned earlier, we still don't know a lot about this virus, how it gets transmitted. There's a feeling, you know, everybody's got a general consensus, but it seems like every other day or once a week, there's something thrown out about how this might not be true or that might not be true. I think there were a lot of places that were throughout a lot of states that were not taking the approach necessarily that I agreed with. California, Los Angeles, where I am, which was much more aggressive. States like, no surprise to all of you here, like Florida and Texas. Well, it was no surprise to see those, in my opinion, having the spikes that they are. I mean, we're all dealing with that relative to our state and the population, but they just threw caution to the wind and they went out there and did what they were going to do. And that is, it creates a fear. It creates a reality that we have to deal with. I don't care how much of a real reality it is, what we deal with is a reality. And if they think it, then it's a reality. And it's something that we have to manage. Our biggest thing in my restaurant is, how do we keep you guys safe? And this is what we're going to do to keep you guys safe. It is the #1 priority, and we talk about it every Monday at our manager meeting. And one of the things that I saw Arus Chris do in, I think it was Georgia, quite some months ago when they opened, or at least a month ago when they opened, was the QR menu. So I put together one of those. I threw it to corporate and said, hey, I think we should do this. So they went ahead and set one of those up. So we kind of had that going before anybody's really doing it. And I think, a lot of people come in and at the beginning, they weren't using it, but it was as much about perception as anything. And we ask every guest, we take a temperature of every guest that walks in that door. We take a temperature of every employee that walks in our door. We ask them several questions about what they have been exposed to, if anything, over the time since they worked last. We ask the guest about what they've been exposed to. We ask the guest about whether they've been traveling. And an interesting tidbit that I'll throw in for you guys, Mattson and Rick, and anybody on the line that may have bumped into this, just I think 2 days ago, we had a guest come in and answer yes, they had been traveling. And our managers, of course, said, well, you're supposed to be quarantined. And they introduced what they said was a letter from the governor of California that exempted them from this. Now, excuse me, I'm calling BS right now, standing right now, but I'm researching it to try to find out if this is indeed a reality, because we need to get that word out to the rest of us out here in Hawaii and find out if this is a reality, so we can, to some of the points you were making, Matt, and give our managers and ourselves direction on what to do in these kind of situations. We had one guest that didn't want to be temped, and we told him, you can't come in if we don't let us tempt you. It's that simple. It's for our guests, our other guests, and for our employees' sake. And we did eventually end up temping his arm. He didn't want to be temped in the forehead. So it's something we take seriously. I think basically marketing to your employees what you're doing, and to guests, because again, back to the social media, it was a constant thing. This is, if you come in, you have to know you have to have a mask on. You can't have traveled and yada yada yada. We listed those for every other day for a week before we opened for dine-in. And the employees have, it's posted. We go through that every single day. It's a reminder to everybody, when you walk in the door, you can't get away from it, because we're going to tempt you and we're going to talk to you. So I feel like right now it's one of the best things we can do is to be talking about it every day, because it's a reality, and it's kind of the only way you can keep somebody from slipping through the cracks because, well, nobody brought it up kind of thing. And it just doesn't work taking that kind of approach.
Great. Is there, Rick, and maybe a similar question, because I think that's something, in terms of solutions to some of the challenges that you and the other panelists have discussed, anything that you've heard from colleagues, fellow owners, perhaps, through the corporate channel, from from other markets, that are ideas that intrigue you, that, might be something for those in attendance to consider, or look at maybe implementing to address these challenges?
Well, I think they covered it really well. I think Mattson and Carlos covered pretty much everything really well. Our Gyukaku Rains Corporation, based out of Torrance, has been very, very progressive and forward, and in a sense overprotective of our workers, which is a great thing. It's been good in that respect, because the balance of us not hearing from Ruby Tuesday is good. We went off, of course, a lot of the State Board of Health guidelines that Cheryl from the HRA passed down to us. We really appreciate that. So we're doing everything we can to be safe and follow the guidelines. I don't think there's really anything overly different though, Dale. The one thing I did see in San Diego, my partner Ted was out there recently. They're doing a lot of outdoor dining. They set up a bunch of AstroTurf and tables and, you know, in parking lots. And I don't know that that's as conducive in Hawaii as some places in California, where you don't have much wind all the time and it's not as hot all the time in the evenings. And anyway, but that was a nice thing I saw, because they're all closing down again right now.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, getting back to the people and saying our workers and keeping them safe and just trying to be positive. That's the biggest thing that I've fought with and I think accomplished at work. My wife Renee could tell you at home it's not always that way. I get home and sometimes I've been kind of beaten up recently, but at work and around a positive crew I keep telling them, guys, the other end of this thing can be golden. You know, unfortunately, we all see all these places going down. So I keep telling them, you know, let's remember where we were at in 2016. You know, so I have a little chart there. And Madsen and Carlos and everyone out here, I had made, my son Rico made this, and this is where we were at in 2016.
Yeah.
It's an income statement of shot in time. And here we go. This is where we're at in April of 2020. That's a Yugo, by the way.
Yeah.
But you know, I try to joke about a lot of things because this thing is so serious. This pandemic is so life and death serious. But you know, with my crew at work, we do try to have fun through it. I realize, you know, for a lot of people, it has been life and death. And, you know, I don't want people to say that I'm joking about the pandemic. I'm trying to keep a positive attitude with everybody, operate restaurants as good as possibly could be operated, and enjoy ourselves through it. There's a lot of people I've been around that are just glum and down in the dumps and, you know, acting like they're going to die. And yeah, financially they are kind of dying, but that doesn't mean we keep fighting through it and get through it in a positive manner.
Yeah. You know, I wanted to throw in on that, and I think that is so important to remind them. And somebody said, how long are you going to be dead? And the answer is a hell of a lot longer than I'm alive. So let's make that alive the best that it can be. And you know, at the end of the day, as we get a little bit older, we realize more and more it's true what the important things are, the feelings that we have. I wanted to just kind of echo what Rick was saying about the Restaurant Association. It is key to me that we use the right channels to get the message to where it needs to go. Because if we're just all talking about it and we don't take the time to write a letter to the governor and to our state senators and legislators about what we think, don't go over the board. What are the 4 most important things? And I did that to Schatz and to Hirono and Gabbard before the Triple P change out on this last time. But I realized I was talking to all these people that could have no context to it at all. So I needed to make it a 1-page letter to send to those guys just to make sure. And I had 0 influence, but I certainly felt good that I had said something to the right people. And yes, they gave the 24 weeks, and yes, they expanded on it. But I don't think that we should assume that the governor is thinking about us 0.1% as much as we're thinking about ourselves. And he doesn't understand some of the challenges that we have, or lieutenant governor, or the different people. So take the time, again, to complain to, or actually, we don't want the complaints as managers and owners. We want people to come to us with a problem. Why are we going to fix that problem? What is the recommended solution? And what other things that they consider to do it? And we say, go, that's excellent. You go for that, you know, but not just whine. So I just want to encourage people. The National Restaurant Association is very active in what's going on towards the end of this month right now. They had a huge part in what we got this last time. The Restaurant Association has been more impacted. It is a highly, highly impacted industry, that's been hit. And so say something, and try to organize your thoughts so you can say it 1, 2, 3 to the people that come to you too. This is what needs to happen. 1, 2, 3,
Great. Thank you. And I think that's important, for all business in Hawaii, but in particular, those that face similar challenges, like in the single industry. If you have an outlet to be able to get support in that and make people aware of the things that are needed and the challenges, I think definitely goes a long way. So thank you for that, Madsen.
Mhm.
We were about a minute over our scheduled time, so love to get some closing thoughts as well from Carlos and Rick. So Carlos, any final closing thoughts or anything to share with our audience today?
I think the main thing I would just say is, and I feel like Rick touched on that a lot, is just the positive way that we're trying to go about this. I think as a rule, most of us will all be around when this thing's said and done, and we're going to want to feel good about the way that we handled this situation. You always want to feel good about the way you handle these stressful situations. Something I always told my kids, it's easy to feel like you're Mr. Cool when there's nothing really going down. It's when things are not great that those, I think, that can rise above that and be positive for those around them. That's when you walk away feeling good at the end of the day. And we will get through this. And I know that's just been beat to death, that statement, but we'll get through this. We just need to do it in a positive way and figure out the way to hold on till we can get a little bit better opportunity in front of us with the tourism and the other things that we need to get in the great state of Hawaii to get us in the positive direction.
Great, thank you. Rick?
Yeah,
Any final
very
thoughts?
good. I think I've pretty well said all I wanted to say that way, Dale, and Carlos just hammered it home. We all need to be leaders that are positive and do the right thing and allow our public to come in and enjoy a great meal, a great safe meal right now, and get over this hump and get back to the future, hopefully a good normal in the future, and succeed financially and spiritually. I think it's very important we just keep treating everybody right when times are so darn hard right now, and keep the communication going. I want to thank Pro Service Ben Gotzi and Paul Clark and Nelson B. Fattel and Eric Duraika and Jordan Wong and Donna for all of this. They have been a huge help in this. It's probably not the right time to say this, but I wanted to tell the Pro Service team that Jordan does not understand client golf. He's beating me up out there, and I'm angry about it.
Yeah, man, come on, man. The client's supposed to win. What's going on here?
He's got no clue about client golf, Ben. Okay, just to let you know.
We'll
right now.
mark that out on the recording and send it just to him so he can have that. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for attending. I know there are some questions in the question box we didn't get to, and so our team will go through and for those of you who did have some questions that we can assist with, somebody will be reaching out to follow up with you on that. Thank you to our panelists. I mean, it was a great session. I think a lot of great takeaways in terms of, especially it can be easy, right, to get into that, these things are challenging, this sucks, this is in our way, but really trying to focus on a lot of the positives and how can we be that role model for our people, but also can we focus on solutions to advance things forward. So I really appreciate all the insight that all of you have shared here today. To our audience, thanks so much for attending. I hope you also had some great takeaways from today's conversation. Just a reminder, everybody, continue supporting local business, local restaurants, and if you are looking for any resources, some of what Rick had spoken to there at the end, and ways that that Pro Service might be able to help through this crisis, please feel free to visit us online at proservice.com/coronavirus. That's where we've put all our resources available to any business in Hawaii, whether they're a client of ours or not, because we know Like many people, we're going to get through this, but the best way to get through that is together and as one community, one ohana here in Hawaii. So thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate your attendance. Thanks so much, panelists, and have a great day. Aloha. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale.